recommend that the Board of Education approve the agenda of the January 11, 2023 organization meeting of the Board of Education. Action by the Board of Education, adoption of the consent agenda means that all items are adopted by one singular motion unless a member of the Board of Education, Treasurer, or Superintendent requests that any such item be removed from the consent agenda and voted upon separately.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Ms. Coco?
Aye.
Mr. Gomez?
Aye.
Mr. Harris?
Aye.
Ms. Schaefer?
Aye.
Ms. White?
Aye.
Thank you. Item C, opening ceremony, our Pledge of Allegiance. Ms. Coco.
Would you please stand for the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item D, election of president for calendar year 2023 per Ohio Revised Code 3313.14. I open the floor to nominations for president.
I'd like to nominate Anthony Gomez.
Are there any further nominations? Is there a motion to close the nominations and direct the treasurer to cast a unanimous ballot?
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Mr. Gomez?
Aye.
Mr. Harris?
Aye.
Ms. Schaefer?
Aye.
Ms. White?
Aye.
Ms. Coco?
Aye.
Take the oath.
Okay. Do you solemnly swear that you will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Ohio, and that you will faithfully and impartially discharge your duties as President of the Board of Education of the Cuyahoga Falls City School District, Summit County, Ohio, to the best of your ability, and in accordance with laws now in effect and hereinafter to be enacted during your continuance in said office and until your successor is elected and qualified?
I do. Thank you. Item E, election of vice president for calendar year 2023, in accordance with Ohio Revised Code 3313.14. Open the floor to nominations for vice president.
I'd like to nominate Mrs. Patty White.
Oh.
Are there any further nominations? Is there a motion to close the nominations and direct the treasurer to cast a unanimous ballot?
So moved.
Take a motion.
Second.
Okay. Please call the roll.
Mr. Harris?
Aye.
Ms. Schaefer?
Aye.
Ms. White?
Aye.
Ms. Coco?
Aye.
Mr. Gomez?
Aye.
Thank you.
Ms. White will now take her oath.
Ready? Do you solemnly swear that you will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Ohio, and that you will faithfully and impartially discharge your duties as Vice President of the Board of Education of the Cuyahoga Falls City School District, Summit County, Ohio, to the best of your ability and in accordance with the laws now in effect and hereinafter to be enacted during your continuance in said office and until your successor is elected and qualified?
Thank you. Item F is our welcome. Our vision, Cuyahoga Falls City Schools, the hub of our community. Committed to a culture of caring. We innovate, we create, we personalize education for all. Our mission, every student, every day, every opportunity. Item G, board recommendations by consent agenda. It's recommended the Board of Education approve all items listed in the Board of Education's business consent agenda. Do we have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? Ms. Cook. These are standard items that we are required by law to approve at our organizational meeting. Please call the roll.
Ms. Schaefer?
Aye.
Ms. White?
Aye.
Ms. Coco?
Aye.
Mr. Gomez?
Aye.
Mr. Harris?
Aye.
Thank you. Item H, presidential appointments for 2023. We do have one change, and then I'll talk about one thing at the end, but I think for the most part, the goal was to keep things the same. So 612 Construction Core Team would be Ms. White. Business Alliance Council, we're going to have two people on this, Mr. Harris and Ms. Coco. Athletics and Activity Council, Mrs. Schaefer. Board Policy Committee, myself and Ms. White. Financial Advisory Committee, Mrs. Schaefer. I tried to get Ms. White for you again, but you know, it just couldn't get it. Next year maybe, next year maybe.
Am I not doing a good job?
You are.
Okay.
He's just teasing me. He's teasing me.
Foundation Alumni Association, myself, Legislative Liaison, Mr. Harris, Student Achievement Liaison, Ms. White. Ms. Coco had asked about wanting to be on an additional one, so we don't have to do that tonight. I wanted to throw some things out there and give you time, because we can always come back to them. So we can always put an additional person on athletics and activities, because especially, I know as we're preparing for the new building, I know that that's taken on a lot of additional work, because I think Mrs. Schaefer was busier with that board appointment last year than anyone has ever been with that board appointment. So that's one that you could consider. Foundation Alumni Association, they're willing to make me a trustee if someone else would want to be the board appointee to that, so that's something that you could consider. That's another area. And then Student Achievement Liaison, if it works to attend the district leadership team, we could always have a second board member attend the district leadership team meetings as well. So I toss that out, and then we can always come back to that, so give those some thought as well.
Okay.
Item I, Board Business, 2023 Board of Education meeting schedule. It's recommended that the board set the time, place, and dates for its regular 2023 meetings in accordance with Ohio Revised Code 3313.15.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? I just wanted to reiterate Ms. Coco's very good point that she raised, that to just make sure that we advertise the fact that we are changing the dates, especially to our building principals and secretaries who do those notifications for Top Tigers. That was a very good point that Ms. Coco made, so I just wanted to take the opportunity to reiterate her point.
Are we going with this green one that we've received?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Mr. Jones is working on a list for agenda review that he will get out to all of us
Thank
as
you.
well.
Perfect.
Just want to make sure I have the right one.
All set, Deb?
Yep.
Okay. Please call the roll.
Ms. White?
Aye.
Ms. Coco?
Aye.
Mr. Gomez?
Aye.
Mr. Harris?
Aye.
Ms. Schaefer?
Aye.
Thank you. Number 2, resolution participate in the OSBA Legal Assistance Fund. It's recommended that the Board of Education approves the resolution to participate in the OSBA Legal Assistance Fund.
So moved.
Second.
This only costs $250, and I can tell you that in my time on the board, we have gotten more money than that back from them. So we've gotten a good return on investment.
I agree.
Please call the roll.
Ms. Coco?
Aye.
Mr. Gomez?
Aye.
Mr. Harris?
Aye.
Ms. Schaefer?
Aye.
Ms. White?
Aye.
Thank you. Number 3, Ohio School Boards Association membership for 2023. It's recommended that the Board of Education approve the continuation of our membership with the Ohio School Boards Association for calendar year 2023, including a subscription to the following: briefcase subscription, free; school management news, $150; and annual membership dues, $9,017.
So moved.
Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Mr. Gomez?
Aye.
Mr. Harris?
Aye.
Ms. Schaefer?
Aye.
Ms. White?
Aye.
Ms. Coco?
Aye.
Thank you. Item 4, Board of Education member insurance option. And any elected or appointed member of the Board of Education of a school district and the dependent children and spouse of the member may be covered at the option of the member under any healthcare plan authorized under Section 9.90 of the revised codes. The member shall pay all premiums for that coverage. The member's exercise of an option to be covered under this section shall be in writing, announced at a regular public meeting of the Board of Education, and recorded as a public record in the minutes of the board. Ms. Stoikoy, will you please poll the board on the insurance and fringe benefits?
Ms. Coco?
No.
Mr. Gomez?
No.
Mr. Harris?
No.
Ms. Schaefer?
No.
Ms. White?
No.
Thank you. Item J, adjournments. Recommend the Board of Education adjourn its organizational meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Mr. Harris?
Aye.
Ms. Schaefer?
Aye.
Ms. White?
Aye.
Ms. Coco?
Aye.
Mr. Gomez?
Aye, thank you. It's 5:25 p.m. Our regular meeting is noticed for 5:30, so we'll take a 5-minute recess. Good work, folks. 5:30 p.m. on Wednesday, January 11th, 2023. I'll call to order our first regular meeting of the year. Ms. Stoiko, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Coco?
Here.
Mr. Gomez?
Here.
Mr. Harris?
Here.
Ms. Schaefer?
Here.
Ms. White?
Here.
Thank you. Item B, approval of the agenda. It's recommended that the Board of Education approve the agenda of the January 11th, 2023 Board of Education meeting. Action by the Board of Education and adoption of consent agenda means that all items are adopted by one singular motion unless a member of the Board of Education, Treasurer, or Superintendent requests that any such item be removed from the consent agenda and voted upon separately.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, please call the roll.
Ms. Coco?
Aye.
Mr. Gomez?
Aye.
Mr. Harris?
Aye.
Ms. Schaefer?
Aye.
Ms. White?
Aye.
Thank you. Item C, opening ceremony. Our vision, Cuyahoga Falls City Schools, the hub of our community, committed to a culture of caring. We innovate, we create, we personalize education for all. Our mission, every student, every day, every opportunity. Number 2, informational items. This meeting is a meeting of the Cuyahoga Falls Board of Education in public for the purpose of conducting a school district's meeting. Business. It is not a public community meeting, although there are opportunities for public participation. If an individual wishes to address the board regarding a topic found on the meeting agenda, the individual must complete a registration form found inside the attendance notebook and present it to the treasurer. Following the introduction of the topic by the board president, followed by board discussion, the individual will be recognized. If an individual wishes to address the board regarding a topic not found on the meeting agenda, they must notify the superintendent and/or board president of the topic no later than 3 business days in advance of the meeting. These individuals may share their comments during the board business portion of the agenda. In both cases, the individual will preface comments by an announcement of their name and address and limit comments to 3 minutes. All statements should be directed to the board president. No person may address or question board members individually. In addition, in public session, the board will not hear complaints about school personnel nor against any person connected with the school system. An unabridged board agenda for this meeting can be found on your electronic device at the address shown on the screen. And there we go. And for your convenience, we do have hard copies of the board agenda on the table by the sign-in book. The next scheduled meetings of the Cuyahoga Falls Board of Education is a work session right here in the Cuyahoga Falls High School Library on January 18th at 5:30 p.m. And then our next regularly scheduled meeting is January 25th, 2023 at 5:30 p.m. Again, right here in the Cuyahoga Falls High School Library. Now, for our Pledge of Allegiance, Ms. Coco.
Please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We have one presentation tonight under item D, and that is our strategic plan update by Dr. Salka. Before she gets into that, I just wanted to preface it by saying, because we have a work session next week and because I've gotten to know all of my fellow board members from working with you, we'll put this as a topic on our work session because I know a lot of you prefer to sit with information and then come back and discuss it. Because Dr. Salka and I have both gotten to know how to work with all of you better. So if you have, immediate questions or if there's specific data that you can think of tonight that'll be helpful to you when we get into a more detailed discussion next week, certainly let her know that or reach out to her between now and next week. But don't feel pressured that we have to, have a detailed discussion next week. Detailed discussion tonight because we're going to plan to have that next week because I know that's better for all of your styles.
Thank you.
Works. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Good evening. Thank you. It's nice to see everyone this evening, and thank you, board. I'm going to open up have this open on my laptop too, just because I forgot my glasses, and I don't know if I'll be able to see all of that. So, all right, if we could begin there. Ryan, you got me, or do I have the? I got you. Okay. All right. So again, this evening we're going to give you an update on our strategic plan. As a little bit of a context for those of you who may not be aware, or that are listening, we had a strategic plan in place and have had one in place, but this year we decided to review that plan. We know that COVID has sort of derailed some things and forced us to press the pause button on a number of things, and so now that we're getting back into the swing of it, we wanted to revise the plan, review the plan that we originally set out to accomplish, and then as a result, made some revisions with the input of the board and with the charge of the board to look at that and just reimagine what this strategic plan could look like. So, as a result, first off, you recall from, no, actually, if you can go back, so from the last one, the last time we were here, this was also presented in the presentation that I gave you briefly, and that is that we took the 4 areas that we originally had, the several areas that we had, and looked at the information that we have gathered from a number of stakeholders. So that information that we've received from stakeholders is still relevant and still very much related to the things that we are going to present to you this evening. So we have the 4 groups that we ended up landing on, which pertain to the academic growth, safety and well-being, engagement, inclusion, and communications, and technology operations and systems integration. And the members of those advisory groups, which we are referring to them, are here this evening. So I just want to point out, for academic growth, we have Dr. Amy Cruz and Julie Dudones are leading that effort. And then our safety and well-being are Holly Merkel and Joe Bagatti. And our engagement, inclusion, and communications is Cameron, and as we know, Christine, who is not here this evening. And then technology, operations, and systems integration is Ryan and Christy, yes, our treasurer. So the 2 of them are leading this effort in their area and the subsequent ones that you see there. So I'm going to get into the subcommittees and a little bit more specifics of what each one of these entails here in just a minute. So our first one, I begin with safety and well-being because I think you all know me well enough to know the importance of safety to me. And that if we don't have safe and secure caring environment for our students, then the rest of this that I'm going to say, led by Cameron quite a bit, and then the communications piece with Christine. But they really do, they come together in a few different ways. But what you hear and see, from with the engagement and inclusion is the continuation of the work with the integrated comprehensive systems and the ICS for the equity work in our district. We also are going to navigate very difficult topics. We know that, courageous conversations is a quote that's often used when discussing DEI work, and those are some things that we need to have happen. And in doing so, we want to navigate difficult topics such as our biases, the inclusion, and our equitable access to instruction. So how are we going to address all of those things in the context of a classroom and in a school and in a district setting? We want to investigate policies and practices that relate to not just equity, but the marginalizations of groups. And so looking at not just our practices, but really some meat behind what we do. And so the board and all of us are going to be challenged to really put some weight behind this with perhaps policies to endorse the work that we're doing. So those are some deep-seated things that we really have to think about while we do take part in this work. So looking at developing and maintaining our positive collaborative relationships, and also then the communications, now moving to the other side, but again related, is just looking at our overall communications, both internally and externally. So we know that we have some work to do. We've done a fantastic job, I think, the first half of the year, and we continue, as we continue, we are just going to get better. But we want to address not just our external communications, but internal as well. And then being proactive. Again, you heard me mention that with the safety, but it also goes along with how we respond to criticism, how we respond to feedback from the community. I like to tell our story. I want to tell our narrative. I want to be the one, our district, to tell our story and not have others tell our story, which happens all the time, right? In social media particularly, it can happen in the media. And I had a call from a reporter yesterday, and I got, no, I'm not going to email you back. Call me. I'll give you that story. And once they hear my version, it's straight from my mouth. And so just those are ways in which we want to be proactive. We want to be able to control the narrative in the sense, of course, giving the truth in what has transpired and whatever. So that is what we are looking to do and become better at. Our last one is technology and systems integration. Again, this is really about efficiency and safety. We know when we're dealing with technology, we have a lot of secure information, especially in a school district. We're protecting our most precious, students here. So we want to make sure that we are operating safely and also efficiently. So there are a number of programs and systems that go on in a district that you don't even think about. And I think when the group sat down to even think about what those are, so much as even filling out a field trip permission slip, for example. There's a process, there's a system, there's a way in which we do that. So we want to address our workflow and become more efficient and safe and secure in doing so. So those are the 4 broad categories, and I'm going to get a little bit more specific here in a moment. So the advisory groups, again, are addressing those 4 things that I just described to you. I also want to sort of take a step back and say that while the strategic plan, I've been given the directive to implement this plan to make sure that it gets done. This really is the board's plan as much as it is all of ours, right? We're working together, but you certainly have feedback, which is part of the reason for the presentation today. So what I wanted to do with that is show the connection between the Board of Education's goals and the district connection. So for those that aren't aware, the board and I met along with our treasurer. We had a retreat in which we talked about goal setting and what was important to the Board of Education members. And what was interesting is what was important to the board in the exercise that we did tied in beautifully with what was already in our strategic plan or the ways in which we were thinking. A little bit more specific in some areas, but there was nothing that the board said that caused me pause or a way in which we were going to have to finagle to fit in with our plan. There was nothing that surprised us. So what I'd like to point out in the 4 areas that I just mentioned, I would like to show what the Board of Education's vision is and what their goal is under each one, and then talk about what the district's committee's goals are that they came up with, and certainly open for debate once you have a chance to digest, but this is the direction in which we are looking to head. So the school safety, the Board of Education was really looking at a warm and welcoming environment that ensures the physical and social well-being needs of every student and staff member and making sure that those are being met. That was important to the Board of Education. So our district committee is looking at the safety and wellness as well and ensuring the implementation of what you may have seen referred to as the Save Students Act. And there are many requirements that fall under that, not just from the safe and secure side, but as I mentioned, from the social, emotional, and well-being of our students. So we decided to divide into groups, and that is where Holly and Joe, while they meet together on occasion, they also splinter off and have their own work, whereas Joe's focus is on the safety and security of the building, and Holly's more focused on the students' needs. And I put in here, so the one you'll see is one around culture and climate, which is where, again, Holly is, and then this notion of threat assessments, both relating to the Save Students Act. And then they have a third goal, which is around just the safety and wellness committee, ensuring the safe and secure facilities. And we added transportation, because that's part of it. That's how our children get to school, for all our students, staff, and parents. Ryan, I'm going to ask you to click on that link, because we hear the words Save Students Act, but what does that exactly mean? So let me just give you a few snippets, and if you scroll down there, which, oh gosh, that is all one big blur to me. So, going from memory, and I could click on it, I suppose. Here, let's see if it opens up. Yep, there it is. So, the health curriculum around suicide, for example, that making sure that we address the suicide awareness and prevention, as well as the threat assessment, as you heard me talk about. Tomorrow I will be going to the training myself, along with many of our personnel that will be going through the same, but it's an all-day event that we're going to be trained. Many, many slides, I noticed, so it's going to be a long day. There's also an anonymous reporting system. There's emergency management, making sure that we have emergency management plans, looking at the climate, and then the social inclusion. So again, looking at our students and trying to figure out, being astute and aware of their well-being and making sure that they're not isolated and looking for those predictors or those the evidence of or examples of students who are at risk or things that they're exhibiting that might cause us some pause or some concern. So that is along with also the threat assessment teams and getting all of that together. So all of those things, and it's very lengthy online here on the website, but those are areas in which we will be addressing, because those fall within the Save Students Act. So we are responsible for making sure that we are in
Can we get a
compliance.
printout of this maybe in our
Sure.
Friday notes, cause I think that'll
Sure.
help us better understand it as we prepare for talking about it next Wednesday.
Sure.
Thank
We
you.
can do that, yep. So, all right, and then heading back, all right, so that's the school safety. The next piece for academics, the board talked a lot about personalizing education for our students and also around graduation. And I learned from Mr. Gomez, the 3 E's. I have used other terms, but I like these, the 3 E's,
I
making
didn't
sure.
come up with them for
Yeah,
that.
right.
I'm not gonna take
But
credit for
you're
that.
right, but you did alert me. So the graduation rates, that not only that we get our students graduating, but that they walk across the stage and they are equipped, prepared for what they're going to do in the future, meaning employment, enrollment, or enlistment. So our students, we know, can go in many different ways, and we need to make sure that we are preparing for any one of those things. So our district committee was looking at creating a systematic approach for teachers and teams to analyze data, we know we need data, to guide instructional practices that engage students and improve academic outcomes. And the things that I mentioned, I'll talk more about this in a subsequent slide, so I'll come back to that. And then the second was our team will analyze student data to verify appropriate reporting and outline interventions to improve our graduation rate. So what this means is we want to track our students. I think in a nutshell, it's tracking our students to ensure that they have what they need to be successful and to graduate. So what are the different things that we are going to do to ensure that they are going to graduate? And that is right in line with the goal that you all presented to us as well. And looking at interventions. So Dr. Cruz and I were talking the other day about like this if-then. So if a student is deficient in, doesn't have the correct enough seals, or doesn't have the test scores, didn't meet the Ohio State scores needed. So that's the if. So then what's that then? So we need to identify things that are very specific to what students need based on what their data is telling us. The engagement and inclusion, diversity piece.
That's
the-
supposed to be communication. Engagement,
Communication
inclusion.
is next, I think. Actually, oh yeah.
Engagement, inclusion, and communication.
Oh yes, thank you. You're right. Yes. I wanted to get that D in there for DEI. It was something was missing, but thank you. You're right. It's communication. So we will ensure that the board felt that they want to ensure that every student has access to resources they need when they need it in order to be successful. This is all along the lines of equity, and that is important to the board, ensuring that we are providing all of our students with the resources they need. And the district committee talked about the integrated comprehensive systems for equity that you heard me talk about before, and just continuing and progressing in that area in all of our district departments, and evidenced by implementation of plans and completion of training and examples of equitable decision making. So this really is a lot of work and a lot of commitment. If we're going to do this and do this well and go all in, then we have to recognize that there's going to be some discomfort, some difficult conversations, and some difficult decisions. Equity it costs a lot of money to do. It causes us to really think deeply and hard about the difficult decisions that we have to make in order to provide equitable opportunities for our students. And so we also recognize that this work was started years ago and was disrupted by COVID. And so we've had a lot of, as I said, disruption and some thoughts about where we've gone and where we need to go. And so in just talking with folks and understanding people's perspectives and what their thoughts are on it, I feel that we need a reboot, and we need to acknowledge the fact that we did some great work, it paused, and now we are ready to reboot. So we are going to kind of hit the rewind button momentarily in order to go forward. And that is that we are going to provide training for our administrative staff first, our members of our building leadership teams, and then we're going to get back into the school setting. But we all have to have an understanding of basic concepts first, and then and a refresher, because if you haven't heard this work or done this work, in the textbook version, if you will, then, you know, you really need we need to all get back up to speed and just acknowledge that and move forward.
I think that's an interesting point too, because I think so much, you know, this has been brought to the forefront so much in the last few years, and yet we entered into this contract with ICS before it became such a dramatic part of the national discourse, particularly in May of 2020. We had already adopted this contract and gone down this road. So much has changed in terms of institutional knowledge and understanding of equity. So I'm interested in how much has changed in ICS's understanding and how much is still the same. Because I'd certainly hope that they're adapting and changing, because I think so much has changed in the last few years with that, you know. And now, you know, I think this definition that we came up with as a board, which I think we're all very proud of, I don't know that we could have thought of that 3 years ago, because I don't think we would have had the knowledge and experience of the world and the way that we have in the last 3 years to have been able to think about equity in this way. So it'll definitely be interesting work.
Yeah, and I meant to put diversity in there because, no, I did not. But I do want to mention it. And
It's the
Cameron-
mission, vision, flip-flop all over
honestly,
again.
might have been, because Cameron and Cameron can attest to this. We were having a conversation about this today, and that is, you know, this need for, so we have a lot of talk around equity, but in my opinion, in my experiences, that you really can't talk about equity unless you're talking about inclusion and diversity. And so, you know, where the conversation was around continuing our work with equity, of course, but embedding some more work with diversity and training and sensitivity, you know, developing that sensitivity to the diversity. And as we change as a community, that we need to adapt and become culturally sensitive and aware of what's happening around us and how we're going to account for that and what we're going to do to make a difference, to make our families feel more included. And so as a result, we do have some things, I have some thoughts about a couple different folks that do some really great work in this area that I think we could benefit from. So that was what Cameron and I discussion this morning.
And I think too, you know, if we're doing a reset, I think it would be important to kind of catch the pulse of where our staff is at, because it's one thing to say we're resetting, but if we need, I think in a way we need to know what we're resetting, because we need to kind of gauge where they're at with that. You know, we can think certain things about certain things, but we don't know how perhaps teachers in the classrooms, I don't know what teachers in the classrooms think of when we say ICS, so I don't know what their reaction is when we say we're rebooting ICS. So if we say we're rebooting it and we don't know what their reaction to that is, you know, perhaps that's something we need to get a sense of a pulse on. And
Yeah, interesting.
And I know Ms. not to put Ms. Carl on the spot to talk, but I'm sure she has a pulse on her people and could have a conversation about that at some point with you. Because I think, you know, if we say we're rebooting something that perhaps wasn't received well, then our approach to rebooting it's going to have to be very different.
Well, and not only and two things on that. You know, Cameron and I have discussed, well, actually our committee discussed about like a survey at one point, you know, to get a pulse of where people are at. But I've also had conversations with other groups in our Ask Us conversations. This also came up in a couple of groups with like the cafeteria, transportation. We've had some talks about equity and diversity, and I've gotten their input, and I kind of know where they're at and how they feel. And I think just having a conversation with me, I think helped ease some of their angst. And I've shared with folks many times, and I will continue to say this, and that is that we have to have the right people leading this work. Mm-hmm. That if people come in and are offensive or accusatory, or you know, this is a sensitive topic that people are already coming in maybe on edge, and maybe for whatever reasons we all have biases, and it just doesn't. It can be, you don't know where people are coming in. So we have to be careful as to where we meet them at and how we treat them. And so getting the right people to do the right work, I think, is going to be key. And how we roll it out will also be a big indicator of our success in how we do that. So, but gauging people and talking to them, which I've already done some of, because I do want to know. I hear from my administrative team on what their experiences, and they've shared their opinions of what they might have thought went right, wrong, etc. But in talking with folks that were doing it, just getting their perspectives too has really helped me. Yeah, agreed. And then lastly, we, as I mentioned, increasing the various ways of communicating with internal and external stakeholders. So not just the volume, but looking at the variety of ways in which we are going to communicate with people. The technology and systems integration goals. There are two things, as I mentioned, that we're talking about preparing for and beginning the implementation of this foreign language to me. But Ryan gets very excited about it, so we'll go with it. NIST V1.1, whatever that is. Cybersecurity framework.
Can we ask him to just tell us what that
Yeah,
stands
please.
for those of us that
NIST stands for National Institute of Standards and Technology, and they have a number of different standards for the way organizations should operate when it comes to data security. And that looks like a lot of things. It looks like, yes, technical hardening, but also the way we move data around our district, where data is stored. Do we store it in a safe and secure manner? And do we practice what happens when things go bad? Do we all have a recovery and response plan? All of those things. Make sure that our district has effective operations now and in the face of bad things that might happen.
this is related to that Ohio cyber thing?
Yes, correct. Ohio
Okay.
Cyber
It's
Reserve is
making-
a partner
yes.
of that process.
I'm not gonna claim to understand it, but it's making more connections
Yeah.
for me.
They help us, and they want to help all public entities in Ohio. We're considered part of critical infrastructure in the state. If we stop operating, we've got a lot of very inconvenient people. So we're critical infrastructure, and the state has outlined resources to help us be secure.
Thank you.
He said it much better, so I'm glad you asked him. So we want to be safe, in conclusion, right? All right, so the second goal is around categorizing existing systems and using that data to make recommendations to either replace, continue, or revise existing programs and systems. So again, an example might be Progress Book. I've gotten a lot of feedback coming into the district and people's thoughts about Progress Book. That's just one example of one system. So the question would be, to have a committee to evaluate, first do an audit of all the things that we have, right? And then analyze what it is, what we want to change, if anything. Maybe we're happy with that system, but this gives us an opportunity to vet those programs and get the input of others that are using the systems and programs. The next thing I want to point out to you is this progress monitoring spreadsheet, and this one I definitely will not be able to see from here. So I'm going to click on it, and I still can barely see it on my own screen. But so I want to acclimate you to this, and you will have access to this at any time you want it. So if you're curious as to where we are on goal number 3 and safety and security, you just click. So I'm going to just step over here for just a minute, but just point out how to navigate this. So at the bottom, there are different tabs for each one. They align to each one of our goal areas. And then we have, and I moved these out of order because I wanted to start with safety first, which is why it says goal 2. But this will keep track of the actual action steps related to the goals, and then details, who's going to take the lead, the deadline, and then the status. So obviously red, yellow, green aligns to we haven't done any work on it yet, we're midstream, or green, we have completed this goal. So these are this is our working document. This is one of the measures in which we hold each other accountable for ensuring that this work gets done. We meet monthly as with advisory groups. We met just the other day, and the people in this room all attend, and we went over this presentation first, but we also then do some report outs of where we are in each one of those areas. Is there something we need? We also are a vetting area. So if Holly's group comes up with the most phenomenal program in the world for students, but it costs us $300,000, and they're plugging away and they're spending months and months and months planning this, and then no one's ever asking any questions along the way, and then you come to me and say, well, we need $300,000. And we have to say no, and yet all those folks did all that work. So by meeting monthly, we have those conversations. We're able to have those conversations and say, whoa, great idea, but let's try to rework or whatever. So in the safety, and this is what I'm just going to point out a couple different things on the goals. So the goals that I read to you previously are in the green, and then just some action steps that you can see that go along with the Saves Act, for example, that they're meeting. They're going to draft the ultimate goal is to have a district plan, right? So that's what they're going to do, and these are the different steps that they're going to take on threat assessments and on the culture and programming. So those are the different things that will occur. And then at the last one that they have, the 2.3, is the assessment, safety assessment that I didn't talk about previously. And that is obviously the grant that we just received and the different things and how we'll spend that money. And so that they've also included that in their work. I did add a budget. It's not on there, but I know, Mr. Gomez, you and I had talked about, I think, making sure that we had a budget for each one of the areas so we know what people are asking for, right? Because if we're going to invest in the strategic plan, we have to, if we're saying these things are important to us, we have to budget for it. So, so that's the safety one, the safety goal. And then academics, so again, talking about where we are there. If you can, or you probably can't see it from here, but you'll see on here talking about power standards. Patty, I know that you and I, Mrs. White, you and I have talked about the power standards and the vertical alignment work that came out of our Ask Us session as well, the need for vertical alignment, and for those of you who may not know, just the before and after of the grade levels. So 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade teachers, for example, get together to see what's happening the before and the after to prepare our students. Common assessments, again, as I mentioned earlier, and then the data, creating a district data calendar and holding ourselves accountable for looking at the data, and then not just looking at data, but what are we going to do with it afterwards. And we also have, as we mentioned, about the graduation rate. So again, looking at the root causes of why students aren't graduating. We should know why every student who does not graduate, we should know the reason why they are not graduating. And we shouldn't know it when they're crossing the stage, we should know it prior to. We should know leading up to it, what is causing them not to graduate. And those are the things that we're working on, and having a sheet for every student and checking off and making sure that we are tracking them throughout the year. And you know, I've had other conversations in my previous life about not waiting till senior year. Why are we waiting till the senior year to play catch up? We need to be having these conversations when they enter the high school. Where are they at, and where do they need to go? And so we need to really be mindful, and I know that the counselors and the staff are working hard to ensure that our students do cross that stage, and we will continue to do that. So again, then developing those if-thens that I talked about before.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
About the color coding?
Yes.
So if something is green, then that means it's a completed goal?
Completing or ongoing.
Oh, okay. So it doesn't mean that check, that's done. So that would be like an ongoing goal.
Yeah.
Would those action steps be changing when you meet? Like, hey, this is going great. Let's add another, take that one off our list and add another one, or that's something that's ongoing? You go from green, maybe you could go to yellow, and then back up to green. How does that work?
Yeah, so a good question, and we talked about this, and I said this to the team, and I'll say it again the same way to you, which is, this is a working document. Like, there are going to be changes, there are going to be additions, subtractions. So I just view it as a roadmap, and that can change, and that it's a dynamic document that we will have things that will change, you know, or action steps that are needed that we didn't anticipate when we're first just talking about a goal. Oh, we forgot this step, we gotta add that in. So, yeah, and then the green, for example, like each year, let's say the action step is to track incoming freshmen. Well, we're not just gonna do it this year, we're gonna make sure that we do that the next year. So, and we haven't had this conversation, but we could return it the next year to red, and then as we do it each year, you know, then it can change again to yellow, green. But,
How many years is this? Because I know we haven't had that conversation about.
I'm envisioning at least two years. Yeah, and again, some of it probably won't be done in 2 years. Just talking about common assessments, pacing guides, all assessments. If we need to make common formative assessments, I've done this, and it takes time. It's over a year long process, and then pacing guides, you know, all of that work, the professional development that goes along with it. So, I mean, we're at least a couple years out. And what may end up happening that I've also done in the past is that you kind of do an audit after 2 years, and then you can wipe off the things, kind of what Ms. Schaefer was saying, that you would take off and then fill with new, or just make sure you transfer those things that have not been complete to a new plan. So there's a couple
some
different
of these you would
approaches.
hope would just become, you know, practice. It's just
Right.
like the graduation track. You like,
Ongoing.
hopefully, you know, after a few years that would just become a practice that we do, you know.
Yes.
And so it doesn't have to be a goal. It's just something that's
Right.
integrated into
Right.
how we operate.
agreed. And again, I'm one for liking to see, I like to see things in front of me for a while so we can make sure that we're holding ourselves accountable. And then just moving on to the equity work. So again, it's much of what I talked about, kind of like the reboot, the restart, and then the different steps that are outlined there, that we have some trainings on the books that are scheduled, that are all day. So some for administrators, some for the advisory teams, and then, or the BLT members. And then just as you can see with talking about equity audits, and I know somewhere in here we'll have some conversations about policy. We could have a full-blown audit, and I should know this, but have we ever had a full-blown equity audit here? No. So it's also something that ESCs offer and some other folks can come in and do. So again, in the communication, the one thing that we're working on that I'm really excited for, this is about the engagement of, there's two parts to this. One is that we've talked a lot about engaging our parents. So when Christine returns in hopefully a month, that's one of her big initiatives that we're pushing forward to get our parent engagement pieces going. We have some great ideas that she will be looking to implement and to investigate. But what there was talk around each year coming and having like kind of a big event where we invite parents, kind of like a carnival-like setting, but at the beginning of the year, a kickoff to the year where we bring the community together, and that we have resources for the parents to look at. So like I was approached, I met with, for example, I met with the YMCA, I've met with the Boy Scouts, Kiwanis has approached me, the Chamber, like all these different groups that, the library, that we can have resources for our parents. So, and I know that she's also talked to somebody at the city, and they're looking to partner and help us with the logistics of that as well. But that's one of the big things, that we would like to make an annual kickoff to the school year. And then with lastly, our technology, and I think actually I think I addressed this a little bit with it in what we are trying to do with it, which is starting with the audit of what we have and then going from there, collecting the data information, having teams look at different systems and that we have in place, and then making recommendations for how we would like to proceed.
Just go back to the parent thing for a second.
Yes.
Ms. Stewart and Dr. Salgo and I had a real brief conversation about that before Ms. Stewart went out, and they both assured me that they'll come and have a conversation with us about that, because obviously that's something that, as board members, we have a lot of insight in. We spend a lot of time with our families, with our parents out in the community, and that's one of our roles. So just want to let my fellow board members know that, because I know there's a lot of passion on that topic. So we will have an opportunity to have a conversation on that.
Yeah, and the dunk tank's ready to go for board members. I think it says board member dunk tank.
I've done it once. You're up next.
Yeah, I know you have. Pie in the face. All right, Mrs. White, if you don't want to do the dunk tank, you can do the pie in the face.
I'll do it. I'll try anything once. So, but dunk tank, I can cross off my list.
I'll sit in the dunk tank all night.
Oh, good for you, because when they asked, I was a no, and I said, I'll take a pie in the face. Not doing that.
I don't want to know.
Plus, no one wants to
I did it
see
once.
that.
Yeah, you did. No,
All right,
I don't want to.
last slide there, Mr. Hutch, please.
She lost us now.
Yeah, I know, I'm just we're almost done, so let's hang in there, one more slide. So just talking a little bit about.
Remember, we said we're going to normalize. Stop apologizing for taking time for important work.
That's right, you did
We
say
have to
that.
stop.
You
We
did.
have to normalize that, because
That's
this is important work. So if it takes time, that's okay. This is important because it's about our core work of making impacts for our students. So
Yes,
we're
it
not
is.
making apologies
It is,
for
no,
it.
I am not sorry, I'm ready. All right, so the next steps we have here are that we are going to, as I mentioned before, continuing our monthly meetings with our advisory team leaders. So those happen the first Monday of every month. We're gonna create a survey to send to our stakeholders. So you saw me, and I said I'll come back to this, and I am, it's at the end of the presentation, but we saw the subcommittees there, and so what we'd like to do is send out a survey to our stakeholders, and that means our school community, but also the community at large, and who would like to be part of these subcommittees to do the work. So that will go out, and we're still debating on how we'll do that to the external folks, but certainly internally, that's rather easy to do, and parents, we have an easy way to communicate with them. But then so in doing so, we like to solicit volunteers for those subcommittees to do the work, and then to hold a meeting for all of the volunteers. So my goal would be to once all of the advisory groups gather who will be part of their committees, I'd like to hold one meeting, whether it's Zoom or in the auditorium, just as, sort of the leader of the plan, to give directions, to review a little bit of the plan, what their mission would be, what we're trying to accomplish, and obviously to thank them for their work. And certainly if any of the board would like to be there, once we plan all that, we'd be glad to we could do that jointly. And then we will begin the monthly meetings with subcommittees. So again, we want to tell people what the commitment is. Before I know when you're asked to be on a committee, the first question many people ask is like, what's the time commitment? And so we want to make sure that we get all of those kind of logistical things out in our survey to them. So that's how we plan to approach it. I will say lastly that we while our administrative team has created the goals, we also recognize that subcommittee members will come in and have some opinions and thoughts, and we are more than welcome to receive those and certainly the input of the board and what changes we need to make. And should have started this presentation with it, but I'll end with it. And that is that I want to thank all of the folks that are on the advisory, leading the advisory teams. I know it's a commitment that, in addition to the work that they already do, are taking on more work, and all of our administrators are part of those teams. And I want to thank them publicly for the work that they've done and making sure that we're off to a good start, which I do feel we are. So thank you to all of them, and thank you to you.
Thank you.
Where do we go to get to this plan? On our website, I would assume.
It's not there yet, and
Okay,
the
but
reason
it
is
will.
once we
Okay.
get this input, the next steps too, and when Christine returns, is to make it, I always
Okay.
say, Christine, will you make this pretty for me?
Okay, okay.
She's good at making things pretty,
But
so.
you'll make it very clear where we go.
Yes, so
For
we
people
will
that are-
have it on the website, and we'll get you the link to the,
Yeah,
Well,
that's wonderful.
yeah, the progress monitor is in the
Okay,
presentation, we'll get you that.
thank you.
And I think that's a conversation we can have too, because I think we'd wanna include our mission, our vision. We wanna tie
Yeah.
it together with, the board, goals with, the district pieces. And I think it's just really important as we take this out to our community as a whole to show the united front on this. Cause I think that's critical. That's something that, historically has not always existed. And so I think it's really important going forward, to have that piece, and I think it'll lead to more successful outcomes as well. And then just touch on what Dr. Salko said, like when she has the meeting with volunteers again, I think that'd be a great thing for board members to go to. I don't know if any board members thinking about it, but I would
Yeah, I'd like
suggest us not to join a subcommittee, and the reason for that is that ultimately our role is at the top end to hold accountability for all of this. So joining a subcommittee kind of puts you in the weeds, and it makes it harder for you to be impartial up at the top, where we have to be making sure that there's accountability. I know you probably have nightmares of me saying the board's job is accountability, but that is one of our key jobs is accountability. So that's part of the conversation we have to have next week is what does, as a board, we need to give direction to Dr. Selico of what does success of this plan look like to us, so that she knows how to report that to us and report these benchmarks to us, not just turning action steps from red to green, but what are the pieces and parts that we need to see to know that this is successful, to know that it's furthering student success and student achievement, which is our number one priority. So keep that in your brains as we think towards next week. Obviously those aren't conversations we can have without Dr. Salko's input, because she needs to be able to say, no, maybe that's not a metric we can create. Yes, that's definitely a metric we could get for you. So have that in your mind. And then the other request I would make for Dr. Salko is, I'm willing to look online at those action steps, but to prepare for next Wednesday, I think it would be helpful for us to have hard copies as we prepare for the conversation for next Wednesday. And then I will personally commit from then on out to view it online, because I know
You got it.
that's always
I know, nope.
the
more-
difference between
yes.
being e-friendly and paper-friendly.
Well, and the purpose, and we certainly will do that, but the link, if at any time, like just in the spirit of full transparency, if you want to look on January 10th or May 11th or whatever
Yeah.
it is, anywhere in between.
I think
you have
going
access.
forward, I would be willing to do that, but
Sure.
I think just to prepare
Yeah.
for next Wednesday,
Yep.
to have that conversation, it would be helpful to all of us to have that, because we're, sit and drink your coffee and pour over the paper.
Just don't spill it on it.
No promises.
So just to be clear, you want the, Saves Student Act information and this, the action steps printed out. Anything else?
No, but if people think of things, I would reach
Yeah.
out to Dr. Salko between
Yeah.
now and
Yeah.
next Wednesday.
Will do.
Cause I know you all might think of things, but I think it'll be important for us to have that conversation next Wednesday, talking about what does success look like for us, so that we can make sure that we're monitoring success on behalf of our community. But
Thank you.
overall, I'm excited. I think this is gonna make an impact for our
Thanks, Deb.
students.
Good. Thank you.
Item E, Treasurer CFO's Business Consent Agenda, Ms. Stoikoi.
Thank you. I'd like to recommend that the Board of Education approve all items listed in the treasurer's consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? I know you're gonna highlight a few things, Ms. Stoikoi.
Yeah, so we have a couple things that are required by law and, one other thing. So we have, the authorization of the local tax advance. That is something that is done every year, this first meeting in January, so we can start receiving those advances from the county, from the real estate taxes, instead of waiting for one giant lump sum in, April. The alternative tax budget, that is also something that is required, by Summit County, and that is correct, it is for fiscal 2024, so this document begins with the July 1st, 2023 through the end of next year. And really, this is what the county uses to create our certificate of estimated resources for next year. And we can obviously make alterations, so when we do the appropriations, we have to make sure they're within those resources. They take all these numbers and basically create that document and give us that estimate sometime in February. And then we kind of true it up at the end of this year with our actual carryover balances. Everything in there is just an estimate right now. And then that creates that document for the rest of next year. The OASBO 457 plan. This is a plan that we already have in effect. We passed this resolution back in 2019. This is in regards to our staff annuities, that if they want to defer into OASBO or equitable for these. We've had that running. There were some changes in law that were made by the Secures Act and the CARES Act that required some restatement of those documents just for us to be in compliance. So that's all that is kind of making those amendments to have us be in compliance. And then last but not least, our donations. We've got quite a few there. Again, I can't thank people enough that give us those kinds of donations, monetary or materials. Every little bit helps the students.
Anything from the board? Please call the roll.
Mr. Gomez?
Aye.
Mr. Harris?
Aye.
Ms. Schaefer?
Aye.
Ms. White?
Aye.
Ms. Coco?
Aye.
Thank you. I am Treasurer CFO's Business. Ms. Stoikoi, your comments.
Yeah, we wrapped up calendar year end, yay. This one's a little more hard on payroll than it is on the budgetary side, where we kind of get saddled at fiscal year, and theirs isn't so bad. But W-2s will be going out to staff here over the next couple days. We've got everything filed, so it was a successful calendar year close, and it's hard to believe that it's January, and now we're all starting to look towards next fiscal year and preparing for that, and next school year already, it goes by quicker every year. Oh, yes. And I also, we did it out of order.
I know, sorry. That's my fault. I take the blame.
I also have someone in the audience that's joining me. This is Sandy Isabella. She is working on getting her treasurer's license. She's currently a principal at Mogador, elementary, and so she is doing her requirement of the 300 hours as part of the licensure. She has her superintendent's license, now she wants to come to the dark side. So she's gonna do some stuff in person here and some things remotely, that we talk about through OASBO, so, she was here this afternoon and sat in on some meetings, and will be here over the course of the next few months here and there, to kind of, you know, learn the ropes and how we do everything here in the different positions, so.
Excellent.
You couldn't learn from a better
No,
person.
That's right.
She's good.
But while Miss Bogdan's here, don't let Mr. DeFrancisco know there's a Mogador person, because I think you'll lose him for a while, because he'll talk Wildcats all day.
We already talked about it.
He's in the Hall of Fame.
I know, I actually, last time I was there was like a week ago, and I took my picture with his plaque, just so I have it on my phone right now.
Thank you and welcome. Item G, Superintendent CO's business consent agenda. Dr. Selko.
Thank you, Mr. Gomez. I make a recommendation that the board approve the items as listed in the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? I just want to recognize we have one retirement on, third grade teacher at Lincoln, Catherine Flanagan. We always try to recognize our retirees when we approve them and thank them for their many years of service to our district. And then I believe Dr. Selko is going to read the resolution.
Yes, the proclamation, I don't know that I could do it as quickly as Mr. Gomez, because he can be a very good speed reader, but I will read it through, and Dr. Cruz says I have to read this. So, the proclamation, and it is very important. Our National Career and Technical Education Month, as we all are aware that we have a great 6th district compact. So whereas February 2023 has been designated Career and Technical Education Month by the Association for Career and Technical Education, and whereas today's rigorous, authentic, and meaningful career technical education prepares young people for a wide range of high-wage, high-skill, and in-demand careers, and whereas investing in career technical education yields big returns for state economies as business and industry nationwide report increasing challenges related to skill gaps and the lack of workers in critical and growing CTE-related fields, and CTA programs prepare students for this work, and whereas career technical education provides students with career exploration opportunities early in their educational experience, which enables them to make informed and purposeful decisions about their academic coursework and potential career programs and pathways, and whereas the Compact's 29 career technical education programs prepare students to be career and college ready by offering programs that link secondary and post-secondary education, lead to the attainment of industry-recognized credentials, and provide students with real-world experiences in classroom labs, internships, and other work-based learning opportunities. Now, therefore, I, Andre Solko, serving as superintendent of Cuyahoga Falls City Schools, do hereby proclaim February 2023 as National Career and Technical Education Month. And I would just add that I encourage all of us to become familiar with the services and benefits offered by the 6th District Compact and the community to support our participation in these programs to enhance our students in another way in which we can prepare them for college or career readiness. And just again to reiterate the importance of the trades and different opportunities, just another example of how students that may not go to college have an excellent pathway to be very successful in a career. So I support and high praise to the programs that our students are able to take part in.
It's been proclaimed.
Yeah.
Okay.
There you go.
I just know, several of you said, "Oh, you got a haircut," and I always like to point out the person that cuts my hair, even though it's just a buzz cut, graduated from Cuyahoga Falls High School 6 years before me from our cosmetology program and went directly with her cosmetology license into a career cutting hair. And she and I talk about it every time she cuts my hair. And so it's just, we talk about career technical education programs, but every 4 months when I go to get my hair cut and Patricia cuts my hair, this is somebody that, impacts my life and, the conversations that she and I have behind the barber's chair. And it's because of career technical education. And I think whether we recognize it in that way or not, so many people have been impacted by these programs here in our school district and have been truly set for success. So And I know Ms. Bogdan and her team have really put a lot of effort, because she's talked a lot about it at Foundation, to really put a lot of effort into making those kids in those career programs feel proud of the decisions they're making, because for too long those programs were stigmatized. And I just want to thank her while she's here and her team for the work that they're doing to try to make those students, feel proud of what they're doing and what they're doing, and that they don't have to make a decision for the rest of their life as a sophomore, because regardless of what they're doing as juniors and seniors in those career programs, they're learning skills that they will use for the rest of their lives. So thank you to her and her team as well. Anyone else? Please call the roll.
Mr. Harris?
Aye.
Ms. Schaefer?
Aye.
Ms. White?
Aye.
Ms. Coco?
Aye.
Mr. Gomez?
Aye. Thank you. Item H, Superintendent's business. Number 1, Superintendent's comments.
I think I said a lot this evening, so just a couple little things. Just as a reminder that Christine is out, she's doing well. She'll be out for a month, and appreciate Lucas stepping in, and so he will be trying to maintain, is the goal here, that all the great things that Christine has started, that we want to just maintain that continual presence with the community and on social media, and so appreciate Lucas doing that and stepping in for her. And as I mentioned, tomorrow I'll be out district all day at the threat assessment training at the Cuyahoga County ESC along with some members. And then, as you mentioned earlier, I will be out next Thursday and Friday with Mickey Mouse. And it's the beginning of a year, so we're just getting started and underway, so we'll have some things coming up. I plan to attend some sporting events, hopefully this weekend and next week, and that's about it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 2, you have.
I do. So I'd like to make a recommendation for the board to consider approving the Elevation Education Agreement. And it is recommended, thank you, that the Board of Education approves the agreement between Elevation Education and the Cuyahoga Falls City School District to centralize our English learner program management and English language development into one digital platform and increase opportunities for staff professional development. Thank you.
So moved. Second.
Discussion? So, I have spent more time with this contract than I ever expected to. But I want to first start by thanking both Ms. Coy and Dr. Selico, because they have both talked to me about this since we had agenda review on Friday. So I want to express my thanks to them, because they've both taken the time to do so, and I appreciate that. I think this contract is a really good idea. I think anything that we can do to make our staff's lives easier is something that is a very good idea. And I encourage our staff to hold me to that statement. My issue with this is that we're taking it from our Title III funds. And I think our board, my fellow board members know that I have a particular passion about title funds, because we get our title funds for a reason. We get our title funds because we have student groups that are identified in those title funds, and Title III funds are for our English language learners. And so when I asked the head of the department that this came from, because this is Title III funds, so it should be supporting these students, how this contract would support these English language learner students, I couldn't get an answer. And so that's very disappointing to me, because those title funds are supposed to be to help our students. So I think this is a really good idea. For me, I'm very conflicted, and there's been more about this as we've dug into it more, and our usage of title funds. And as you recall, I asked some questions about our title funds. I asked for follow-up on our title funds back in May. I followed up on that request several times and never got an answer. So it's difficult for me to personally, and I'm not trying to convince anyone on the board of my personal difficulties on this situation, for the record. But it's difficult for me in this situation when I've been stonewalled in my requests to get more information about these title funds, to spend title funds on something that I was told that I'm not given a response into how they were going to support our students. So I support the contract. I don't support the usage of the title funds for the contract. And I wanna just again appreciate how much time Dr. Selko spent talking to me about this contract, because we spent a lot of time talking about this contract. And we discovered some things about our title funds that I think we'll do better in the future, and I really appreciate that. And I want to express my appreciation to her. So I just want to clarify that I'm very supportive of doing things better, making our staff's lives better, but for me personally, I can't support this, but I'm not trying to encourage you to join me in that. It's just a personal thing that I gotta deal with. So, thank you for indulging me. Please call the roll.
Mr. Harris?
Aye.
Ms. Schaefer?
Aye.
Ms. White?
Aye.
Ms. Coco?
Aye.
Mr. Gomez?
No. Item I, Board Business, 2023-2024 calendar, first read. I know we have a few changes to the calendar. Were you gonna highlight those, or did you want Mrs. McClure to highlight that? I know there's just a couple big changes. I didn't know if you wanted to take a few moments to highlight them.
Mrs. McClure's revised this several times, so she should know it in her sleep, so why don't you go ahead?
Well, and I'll tell you, I made everybody totally Google it, I said, because if you don't find it, Anthony Gomez was fine. Then I would have to change it.
I didn't
True.
attend your calendar hearing this year, though. I didn't come to the hearing this year.
Nobody came to my hearing.
No, I came last year.
So we worked a lot with Dr. Cruz's department on this to try and get the most bang for our buck yet for both our students and our staff, to get our students here as many days as we could, but also get that staff PD that they really, really need with all of our new initiatives and new curriculum and things like that. So the suggestion was made to front load an additional day of PD to the front of the school year. So you'll see that the staff starts on the 14th and they have three days rather than 2. So there are some contractual obligations in there. There's a half day that is a staff day, that is their time to get prepared themselves. Traditionally, there's a half day that's convocation related, and some time for principals with their staff. Usually that's a couple hours. So that leaves us maybe a day, almost a day and a half, maybe a little more, for some professional development. So it pushes everybody back just a day to start. And you'll see we're doing the stagger start again with our 6th graders and 9th graders coming in, and the 7th, 8th, and 10th through 12th coming the next day. And then the green is early release Fridays. The first one in September, and then the next one is a records time for the staff. We were able to allow a non-work day for the staff the day before Thanksgiving. I know that's been requested many times, and we were glad that we were able to make that work. And I think the only thing is then we were still able to have the staff finish before Memorial Day. We were able to increase by a couple of days our student days while keeping with that 184 that's contractual for the staff. And then the attached page is the hours the kids are in school, and then you can see at the bottom of that page there's a note on what is required. So that kind of is how we do the calamity days now. So if we were to have some hours of calamity time, that's now our threshold versus that traditional 5 days.
Can you get us this year's hours?
I will.
Just
Yep,
before we vote on the
absolutely.
calendar, just so that
Yeah,
we can compare.
I will
Thank
get
you.
those in your packet on Friday.
I only have one comment that, I understand what you're doing with the coding of the conferences. And the little asterisk yellow is evening and then the all yellow. But I do see that potentially confusing parents
Okay.
thinking that they have no school and it's evening conferences.
Okay. So make
So if
one
there's-
a different color.
Yeah, that was the only,
That's fine.
that was the only thing that I saw that I
Just do
could
that.
see confusing. But that's not like a change that we'd have to have a hearing over, so it's
No.
not.
No, it
No,
doesn't
no, no.
change any hours or anything, so.
And then I had a question, I think it's something Ms. Coco raised on Friday at agenda review at all, as well, is when can we start telling parents, I know that we haven't voted on this yet, and that we'll have to do that in February, but when can we start letting families know about this? Cause like, families are asking about it, and, but to miss, the point you made was, you only get one chance to tell families what the calendar is, because the first one they see, like, you're not gonna take that one back from that, and it gets printed and on their calendar.
I would like to be able to post this on the website as a draft, so that, because the public needs 30 days to have input on it, but I agree with you, the first time they see it, they're not gonna look for another one, this is gonna be the one that they're gonna use.
So is this, but like, we could go by this,
I
you think?
feel so, I mean, we've
Yeah.
tossed this,
We could post it and write, typically what we've done is put, draft on it, and that the board will take action on it on such and such a date.
Cause I know, I think we've probably all heard from at least one parent asking about next year's calendar, so I just.
I've seen a couple just
Yeah.
in different parent
Yeah, we are
teacher
late getting it out,
groups,
honestly.
so.
And I understand, but I just didn't wanna share it before I asked you that question, because I wanted that assurance as well,
The
because.
principals have all had seen this and had input, and administration and the union. So I'm pretty comfortable that we're pretty well set.
Yeah, and I would just add that moving forward, this is totally on me, this is Mrs. McClure's, I probably have driven her crazy. I've made many revisions and looked at it many times, being new and trying to figure out the nuances of what's required and what's not, and trying to get us more student days. I messed with it many times, so that's why we're late, but moving forward, we will have this calendar recommended to you earlier.
I just wanna note one more thing about that day before Thanksgiving. I know, we had a somewhat contentious conversation about it a year ago, but the fact that the union brought it up, I think, even though we didn't agree to it a year ago, I think the fact that they brought it up a year ago is a lot of the reason why it's happening now. So, while I know, that conversation was perhaps not super positive a year ago, the fact that we had the conversation is much of the reason why it's happening now. So even, when things aren't super positive at the time, sometimes they can be the drivers of change as well. So I want to thank our union for bringing that up, because I do think it's a good idea in the end, and in the end, it is still happening. So thank you to Mrs. Carlisle and her team for bringing that up. So we will vote on this next month. Anything further from anyone on the board? If anything pops up, go to Dr. Salko, and she can direct it to Mrs. McClure for.
Perfect.
So I'll just change the color on all the conference data.
At first it confused me, and I mean, I'm no genius by any means, but if it confused one person, it could confuse two people, and so, but thank you.
Yep.
Number 2, policy for first read. We have one policy for first read. It will be on, for approval at the January 25th Board of Education meeting. If you have any questions, reach out, to a policy committee member, which is, again, Ms. White and myself. Number 3, future agenda items. Does anyone have any future agenda items to bring up?
I still want an update on gifted, but,
Why don't we, here's the thing, this way, here's where I think we could, why don't we put that as a topic on the work session?
Okay.
So we can have a conversation around what you're looking for, so that we can make sure everybody understands.
What was
how-
that?
Gifted.
gifted.
Why don't we add it as a topic to the works? Do you think
Sure.
that's fair?
That's fair.
Okay. And I know I circulated a preliminary list of work session topic. I think we're gonna have additional things to add. And then, Dr. Selico, Ms. Joycoy, Mr. Jones, and I are working, to get that list together.
It's getting long.
We were
Yeah, we are.
we're working on getting through today before we
Yeah.
we're working on that. So we'll
Perfect.
work on that. We'll circulate a list again as well, so that you can, formulate your thoughts. And
Perfect.
so,
Knows a little bit.
Sometime in February or March, I'll need to do another dispenser update.
okay.
To make sure we meet those requirements.
That will work. Sounds good. Thank you. Number 4, committee reports. I know we were just all reappointed, but it's mostly the same, so I know some of us might have some things to report. And I did apologize to Mr. Jones because, you know, I love a technicality, so I said, you know, you have to take the names off, and it's probably gonna be the same names, but just still in fairness to the board, you have to take the names off and then put them back on.
Think about that.
You can accept my apology tomorrow. 612 construction core team, Ms. White, did you have something?
Yeah, I do, a little bit, and don't ask me to explain too much, because I don't know how to explain all this stuff.
I'm here to help.
I can try, but, you know, any rate, the update from Hammond was the EPA, the permit came, so we're good, go ahead
Good.
there. Summit County are still waiting on the water line, but they have done some of the water line and utility lines. The cut and fill, this is where it gets really weird, and the piping going into the ground. Now, what they're gonna have to do, as far as I understand, is, drill down into the ground before we can do the, pad. And they use a big drill, I mean, a really big drill, and it takes all the stone and gets it all compacted so that it's sturdy and it will hold the structure. Is that pretty good? Okay. So, there's 3 water line taps, and there will be others. There was a problem with one tap, but the neighbors were notified. And it just happens that they're older lines on Newberry. Portage Trail probably also be an older utility line. Oh, well. So they're gonna talk about where the taps are gonna go and so on. And let me see here. They are working with, Cuyahoga Falls Electric to prepare for that installation. They received the easement on Portage Trail. And they might have to shift that a little bit. The gas station will be back where we said it would be, but behind the fire station, but it won't look exactly like the fire station. The timeline is good. They did lose a few days, this month, all the rain and the mud and everything, but they do have the mud pads in place, and they're setting up their, what did they call it, their construction,
Trailer?
yeah, trailer or housing. There was a name, but I.
Trailer City.
Trailer City.
Yeah,
City,
yeah,
yeah.
Trailer
Trailer
City.
City.
I thank you, Ryan. So, yeah, they are doing that. That will be up. But they're really trying to get to where they need to be to go ahead, and start building. The E-rate, meeting, I think, well, Ryan, you said you would meet and try to see where they are on that. And so everything's good. I mean, everything is going okay. So, that's about all I had.
And sometime, now that we've approved the dates officially, I will send an email out to our committee sometime over the long weekend, with these dates, just in a little bit of information. Okay, I just wanted to say that to the board, and make that commitment to all of you as well. And I just made a note to Dr. Salco that we need to rename the next one, because I think we're Business Alliance.
Business Alliance Council. or
Business
Committee.
Alliance
Oh, okay.
Council, so we will rename that for the next agenda. But Business Alliance Council, Ms. Coco.
Yes, we met yesterday morning. There were 35 in attendance, only 32 signed in, but I don't think Dr. Selico and Ms. Stokoy probably signed in, but I try to eye and count everyone while I'm sitting there every day. We've had new people again yesterday, some newcomers that hadn't been there before, and Ms. Stokoy gave a condensed 5-year forecast, and one that everyone could understand, which I much appreciate. There were a lot of questions from our community members and business members that were there, and so we didn't really get a lot else done besides that. But the good thing that came out of that, first of all, was their understanding of how we're funded by the state, as opposed to our portions that are coming from our stakeholders. And, you know, there was a lot of amazement on exactly how that works. And, you know, they communicated that that's something that we might want to really focus on, communicating more out to the community on exactly how that funding works in layman terms for them to understand, especially when it comes to levy time and things like that, just for them to understand that process and the perception of us, you know, well, the district has all this money and they get money from the state, why do they need money from us? So, another very positive part of that was some members stayed afterwards and brought up the suggestion that and expressed their interest in becoming more politically involved when it comes to dealing with our representatives and Columbus and becoming more active in that process of really lobbying for funds to be fairly distributed to our public schools, which is why I'm very excited for Mr. Harris to join our group, because that's right up his alley. So, and I've already spoken to him about that as well. And our next meeting is Valentine's Day, February 14th.
I wonder if you couldn't get State Rep Weinstein, State Senator Rogner, and maybe even State Board of Ed member Jackson to all come to one of those meetings.
That is a great
I
idea.
bet
Great
perhaps they would,
That's a good idea. Yeah,
Yes.
that's one of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
great idea.
since they're interested, yeah.
I bet they
I
would.
don't think they'd say no.
I don't either, I think.
I don't think they would
Casey
either.
will be there.
Mr. Harris says they'll say yes.
They'll say yes.
So.
We'll get him there. Yeah.
Athletics and Activity Council, you'll meet after the winter session ends, but were there any updates from athletics?
Oh, yeah, well, didn't write that down. Oh, that's right, the Suburban League the swim team Suburban
Yes.
League Championship.
Mhm.
I didn't write it down, so it's hard to remember things.
That's a good one. Congratulations to our swim team
Yeah.
for winning the Suburban League. Really proud of them, so.
We've had a couple wrestling tournaments that have gone pretty well too, for the middle school and high school.
And I saw our varsity head coach of the boys basketball team
Oh, I saw
posted something yesterday. He said it was the first time he can think of in modern history that all 5 boys basketball teams won on the same day. I think
Wow.
it was yesterday or the day
Oh,
before. So
Oh, cool.
we're seeing some great
Yeah.
achievements out of our winter athletics team. So
Mhm.
that's wonderful. It's wonderful because at the end of the athletic season, Mr. Johnson gives us that update, and they all have great GPAs too. So
That's good.
they're doing great in the classroom, and then they're getting these amazing achievements
Right.
in their sports as well. So how wonderful.
Mhm.
Board policy, we had the one policy that we set for first read, and then the policy in regards to buildings and grounds safety and security, we referred that to the full board for the work session, because it seems like there's interest from the full board in having some more conversation around that topic, and we felt that it would be important for us all to have conversation around that, as well as it would be a good opportunity for the full board to get an idea of engaging in that policy work as well. So it's serving 2 important purposes. Is there anything I missed, Ms. White?
I don't think so. That was like 10 minutes. 10-minute meeting.
Our best one, our best work yet. It's longer than the organizational meeting though.
Yeah.
Financial Advisory Committee, you have a meeting next month, correct? Yes. Everybody's meeting on Valentine's Day. Because the foundation is meeting on Valentine's Day next. But we had our foundation meeting last evening, and it was really a wonderful meeting. We welcomed 4 new members to the foundation as trustees. Karen Schofield, who we all know, Nikki Alden, who is a mother of a senior here at the high school, 2002 graduate, and a realtor, Pat Freilich Vickers, who has had several different careers, also a graduate, and Linda Skidmore Mapis, who's the woman I shared the story about, the scholarship she started, the memory of her brother, and I shared with her that I shared that story as well, because it's just so moving. So we welcomed those 4 new trustees, and then we had a 5th person come visit us. Her name's Liz Sinclair. She works at Kent State University, and her job is directing the scholarships for KSU, and she's looking to retire. And as you know, one of the big things we do at the foundation is give out our scholarships. So we were really excited about inviting her expertise in. Our scholarship application window is open until February 3rd. If you know anyone who's a senior at Cuyahoga Falls High School, please encourage them to apply. We have 50 scholarships we're trying to give out this year. As of last night, we only have 3 applicants. So odds are real good that if they submit a full application, that they're gonna get a scholarship. The only people that are eligible for our scholarships are Cuyahoga Falls High School seniors. So, you know, the pool is pretty limited. There's 50 scholarships to give out. There are scholarships for alternative pathways other than just a 4-year college. So if, you know, perhaps somebody's going to trade school, or even if they're just going into the trades, not to trade school,
Right.
we could give a scholarship just to help them buy tools. So we have a lot of scholarships available. It's not just a 4-year bachelor's that they have to be going for. If you know of anyone that's interested, please encourage them, because this is what we do. It's one of our main focuses, and we want to give this money out to help our future graduates be successful in whatever their path ahead is.
And where can they go to apply?
CFSFAA.org, and they can also check their email, because Ms. Bogdan has sent several notices
Okay.
out to our seniors about it. She sent one out today as well.
Perfect.
But we know that they don't read all their emails. It's just like, but we're really excited about the work ahead. We also approved our strategic plan. I'm not sure how that works. I don't understand all of how they set up their operations, but their president has like a lot of power apart from the board. And that's just how they go. But Senator Brenner, who's the chair of the Senate Education Committee, came to announce that, you know, which is a bold move, but he came to the state board meeting to announce that he's still trying to gut all their powers, and they introduced Senate Bill 178 as Senate Bill 1. But supposedly, as part of this House deal that the Democrats made to elect Speaker Stevens, that might be kind of put
Right.
on the chiller. So we're not quite sure what's going to happen.
There were some deals made in education's favor. Yeah, we're just waiting to see what those are.
So we're
So
waiting to see what that is. We're
Yeah.
optimistic about the finance piece, because they supposedly made a deal to help with the finance piece as well in the budget. And then lastly, the governor replaced Mike Toll, who wrote the Title IX resolution that we also wonderfully got a copy of. Fortunately, the governor took him off the State Board of Education and replaced him with Jim Murmis. And I watched the state board meeting, and Jim Murmis was sharing his story. He actually has 4 young children that are not his own. They're actually his grandchildren. He's raising them as his own because his oldest daughter is impacted by drug addiction and mental health issues. So I was really moved by his story, and I think he'll be a great
Right.
addition to the board. And I think you all know that I'm very involved in that community as well. So I was very moved by his story. I think he's going to be a great addition to the board and much better than Mike Toole. And then Student Achievement Liaison, you are meeting in February, is that
Yes.
correct, Ms. White?
Yes.
Thank you. Then item 5, comments, Ms. White, you're up first.
I really didn't have much, but I did, in the notes, I just wanted to say that I'm really pleased that, if I can find where I stuck the thing, that we are looking at a book that I have read and really liked. I can't find it, darn it. Okay, I'm gonna summarize. I can't find my article. But at any rate, it's differentiating instruction, and I got it out and read it, and it's just full of things that I have been trying to say for a long time, with key concepts, essential questions, revolving around those things with curriculum. And to me, as a teacher, I saw things happen in my students' eyes, that they came back to me 2 years later, said, I still remember what you taught. I went, okay, that's really good, you know, I'll take it. And so I think it's a really strong book, basically how to differentiate. So any rate, if you get a chance, you can borrow mine, or whoever has a copy, but I believe it's really good, so I wanted to say I appreciate that a lot. Excellent book. And that's really all I have.
Thank you. Ms. Coco?
I don't have a lot tonight either. I'm just looking forward to the second half of our school year, and I'm excited for us all to continue working together. And thank you, Dr. Solico, for your presentation tonight. I think it's important, as you said, that these are our goals that and we are together as a team working towards the same mission and vision is so important. And I'm very honored that I get to be a small part of that and seeing our district grow and the success. And just one more thing, I noticed that it was put up on the district media, and I appreciate that it's continued reiterating about attendance for our students. They had a piece on there like, check where your student is, red, green, yellow, and how many days have they missed so far this year. And honestly, it made me log into Progress Book and look at my own student to see where we were at, because I didn't know off the top of my head, and I don't always click over to the attendance portion of their Progress Book. So it worked on me, and hopefully it made other caregivers check as well. So that's all.
That's kudos to Mrs. Merkel and her team.
Thank you.
I'm up next. I just wanted to highlight, tomorrow I got invited to speak to the GSA at the high school for a second time, so I must have done an okay job last year. So they invited me back tomorrow, but I just wanted to highlight that they said that they appreciated so much hearing from an older perspective. So now I'm officially made it to old. Listen, I appreciated the intent, but now when you hear me, I'm gonna start using them. I'm gonna say from an older perspective.
What am I gonna say, ancient?
We'll all have to determine, we all know that our students, if you want honesty, you ask the students.
That's right.
Yeah, true.
That's right.
So that, and then I got an email from Mr. Hartong, who runs the Tiger Voice over at Roberts. They wrote me a letter, and I wanted to wait to explain it, and then I'll forward it out to all of you. But they wrote me a letter about how they want a walking path at the new 612 campus, and so I offered to come meet with them. So I think sometime in February I'm going to go speak with them, as opposed to just writing, something in response to them. I felt I'd rather go engage with the students and have a conversation with them. So I'll go speak with them sometime in February, and then Mrs. Curtin is teaching a new class at the high school called Intro to Gender and Sexuality, and she asked me to come teach. She has 2 back-to-back sections of that, which is kind of exciting. So she asked me to come guest speak one day, so I'll be coming in February. So that'll keep me busy for a while. But I also want to thank my colleagues for entrusting me to lead you for another year. I think we should all be very proud of what we accomplished in our first year together, and we are guaranteed another 12 months together. And I think if we can look back at what all we accomplished last year, I think we're going to get a lot done together this year. And we have a superintendent for the whole year, so I think we can get even more done. So I'm really optimistic about what we can accomplish for the students of this district, because they deserve more every day, and I think we are on a path to start delivering for them. Mr. Harris.
Yeah, I don't have much. January is School Board Appreciation Month. I just want to thank the folks up here with me. It's been, as Mr. Gomez just said, it's been a year of learning and growing with each of you. I think I've learned something from each of you, so I'm looking forward to the next 12 months of continued learning and growing and becoming a better board member every day. That's it.
Thank you. Mrs. Schaefer?
I also don't have much, although I do want to thank you for your optimism and putting things in perspective, because sometimes you get bogged down with everything that's happening and everything that is coming forward, and you kind of take a look back and say, wow, look what we've done and what's happening, and the optimism is great. I saw on the announcements in the high school that they did a little feature video recognizing Mr. Dustin Harris, who's been with the Tiger Band for 20 years now. Mr. Kerfman hired him, and then when he left, and Mr. Duvall was the band director, and he was the assistant. Mr. Harris was the assistant, and now he's the assistant band, or he's the band director. And I'm also an alumni, And there's a gigantic tradition involved with the Tiger Band, and people like things a certain way. And I think that personally speaking, that he's done a great job of maintaining tradition and then still keeping things fresh and new. And he's in it for the kids. And if you have watched the video, you saw how impactful he is with the students, and it's really awesome to see. So congratulations on 20 years, Mr. Dustin Harris.
Item J, executive session. I just want to clarify because I had somebody in the community ask about this. So there was a recent Supreme Court decision that changes the way that boards that are governed by the Open Meetings Act can enter into executive sessions. So whereas before, we had to go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, now we can lump it all together and list anything that we might reasonably believe we might discuss and then enter it all together. So that's why you're seeing a change in this, but I did have one community member reach out, and if one person thought of it, perhaps more did. So while we're still on the recording, I wanted to just note that for the community. For the sake of transparency, we made the determination that we would only list things that we believe that we would reasonably possibly touch on, as opposed to just citing the entire law. So what you see are things that we think there might be a chance that we might talk about. It's not a guarantee, because that's kind of what the Supreme Court ruling said, and we have a really good attorney. If I said anything wrong, he'll tell me in just a few moments if I did, which is why we pay him and why we hire the firm again. But I want to clarify that because somebody did ask, so I want to make a point to clarify that while we're still on the record. And the other thing, in the interest of respecting people that don't have to be here, if ever we expect to take action after an executive session, we would keep the recorders and keep the live stream going. But if we don't expect that, then we want to allow people that don't need to be here the ability to go home at a more reasonable time. So we're not going to record the endings of our meeting, which would just be the adjournment. This is a common practice throughout the state of Ohio. I think you all know I'm a big nerd and watch other people's school board meetings. It's the normal practice throughout the state of Ohio. You just state before you go in whether or not you would expect action, and if there's not action, then you stop the recording, and you wouldn't just record the adjournment. So we did make that change. Again, in the interest of transparency, I want to state that before we end that. But I think it's a good practice to allow, especially since we often have student workers. That's not the case tonight, but we often do have student workers in interest of getting them out quicker. So there will be no action after our executive session tonight. But with that said, item J, pursuant to Ohio Revised Code Section 121.22G1 and 121.22G4, it is hereby moved that the board adjourn to executive session to consider the appointment, employment, dismissal, discipline, promotion, demotion, or compensation of a public employee or official, and to prepare for negotiations with public employees concerning their compensation or other terms and conditions of their employment. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Please call the roll.
Ms. Schaefer?
Aye.
Ms. White?
Aye.
Ms. Coco?
Aye.
Mr. Gomez?
Aye.
Mr. Harris?
And we enter at 7:07